I want us to move on to the parties that could be deemed as kingmakers. Now that you actually mentioned coalitions, right? It is said that there's going to be a number of provinces, and even nationally, we could be seeing a coalition of sorts. I've been doing my research with the likes of Israel and I think Germany. A number of Scandinavian countries are actually being ruled via a coalition. All right. So I just want to know, before we actually get into the parties that could be deemed as kingmakers, what's your thoughts on coalitions? What kind of coalitions are you foreseeing after the elections? I mean, I've been reading about certain articles saying that Paul Mashatile is just trying to lure the EFF into some sort of coalition where he is the president and Julius Malema is his deputy, or vice versa. I'm hearing that the DA might be fooling everyone with the Moonshot Pact, and they trying to negotiate with the ANC to have their own sort of coalition. Gayden McKenzie is saying that he's going to be the real kingmaker. What's your thoughts on coalition in general, and which coalition parties or partners are you foreseeing after the 29th?
Look, I think coalitions is a reality whether we like it or not. So I think we need to, as South Africans, we need to get over the fact whether it's going to happen, it is going to happen, and we need to get comfortable with it. I think what we still have to figure out is how does coalitions properly work for all of us. And I think, there's that old saying, there's no permanent friends and foes in politics. And I think we must remember this as a country. After the elections, the enemies of a few weeks ago will be friends sitting around a table cutting a deal. So I think what's going to be important is that there are some mature, rational, and cool heads in a room. The Constitution only allows 2 weeks for the president to be elected after the election, so this is going to have to happen very fast. And for some coalition scenarios to be put on the table. Of course, none of the parties will tell us before the election who they're going to go in coalition with. But also, I also understand that they, for now, want to campaign as hard as possible for their own votes, try to get 50% before they talk about coalitions. But I think it's a reality. I think there's probably a real chance that the ANC may need the support of a party like the IFP. I think the IFP could be quite an important player in coalition politics, not only nationally, but also in KwaZulu-Natal. I think that the small parties could be important, although I think it's different. National and provincial governments are different than local governments, and I think the likes of Gayden McKenzie and the small parties won't have that much influence. I also ANC has learned their lessons at local government level that it's a big risk going into coalitions with these small rats and mice parties because they can hold you to ransom. They can say, well, we want this position or we want this tender for us to support you. I think the ANC would have learned that lesson. I think if the ANC goes, if their support goes to the low 40s, even to 40%, their only real options is a coalition with either the DA or the EFF. That's become the only real options. I can't see them doing a deal with the MK party of Jacob Zuma. I just can't see them doing that. So, then, it's going to have to be up to the ANC to determine how that deal looks like. Just lastly, an alternative scenario, which I've written about in my column on News24, is that we go to Parliament 14 days after the election and there's no deal on the table. And when the president of the country has to be elected, there's no clear given on what's going to happen. And you could have some very surprising scenarios in that regard, including that the candidate from the opposition may actually be elected as the president.
Wow. And let's just, before my last question, I want us to speak about the smaller parties of sorts and a number of them that are new entrants in the political system. We've got the likes of Rise Mzansi. Songezo Zibi is their current leader. Well, that's the probably one of the biggest outbreaks in terms of their visibility and what they could potentially do in the voting system these upcoming elections. We've got the likes of the PA who's saying they're going to be the kingmakers of the country in this election. We've got the likes of Herman Mashaba, who's now broadened his fan base because the last time they contested in the local government elections, they only contested in 2 provinces. And you've got the likes of Ace Makashule with his act now. And I'm not sure if that is just an act of sorts. And then we've obviously mentioned the MK party now. And there's a number of these parties that are popping up. You've got the Good Party as well, Patricia de Lille, who some would say that her taking a position in Parliament was just a way to kind of neutralize their fan base in terms of growth, and her spreading her wings all over the country and just going outside the voter base. You've still got the likes of ACDP and the Freedom Front Plus, the IFP as well. Who could surprise us here, Adrian, in terms of them growing their voter base or them being actual kingmakers? And I want you to think of it nationally and provincially, because some of these parties are regional political parties, like you've got the UDM as well. So who do you think is going to surprise us, or who do you think is going to be the
Yeah.
main player?
Look, I need to wrap up, so let me be quick. I
Yes,
think
yes,
that
definitely.
the legacy small parties, there might be a few of them not returning to parliament. I won't be surprised if the likes of Coke, the PAC, Adob, with the AIC don't return to parliament. I just haven't seen them this campaign. I haven't seen what's unique about them, and I think there's other options on the table now that's more interesting. I think Mashaba is interesting. I think Action SA, I have no idea what they will achieve. They could get 2% or they could get 7%. I think they could surprise us in Gauteng. I think there's a lot of energy around that party. And I like that there's an alternative for kind of people who are more to the liberal, democratic side of politics, but who don't find attraction in a party like the DA. I also think Songezo Zibi is the right Mzansi is interesting, as well as Muti Maimane Fosa, because they are both young leaders who come with experience. Zibi from corporate, Maimane obviously from the DA, and they are presenting something new. They're saying, give us a chance. We don't want to go with these old parties. I suspect both of them to get seats in parliament, but whether it's going to be 1 or 3 or 5 or 6 or 10 seats, I'm not so sure. You know, the polls don't show us that small parties do well. But I've heard a lot of people saying they actually are happy that we have these options this year, that there's more options than just the normal ANC, DA, EFF. So I think those parties, specifically in the urban areas, could do well. And then lastly, the PA. The PA is also a dark horse. I don't know if the PA will do as well as they think in the Western Cape specifically. I know they've targeted the coloured vote, specifically the rural municipalities, but there's a big difference between municipalities and provincial government. You know, and the DA in the Western Cape is just so strong in terms of their organising all over the province. Most of their voters also sit in the urban areas. So I don't see the PA really as a massive threat for the DA in the Western Cape. Nationally, I think we'll see Songezo Zibi, Muti Maimane, Herman Mashaba in Parliament after the election.
And then finally, last question, Adrian, who will rule South Africa after the 29th of May?
You, Mondi. I think that's for me the important point. It's up to us now, the voters, to decide who are we going to give the right to rule. We are not passive people. We are active citizens. We are giving them the privilege of governing our country, and we should be actively involved in choosing correctly, wisely, and keeping them accountable for their actions. Not only journalists like us, but every member of society should be involved in some sphere of forms. We can speculate whether the ANC is going to get 40 or 45 or 50 or 48, but at the end of the day, it's up to us as citizens to keep them accountable.
Brilliant, man. Thank you so much, Mr. Adriaan Basson. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That was the editor-in-chief at News24, Mr. Adriaan Basson, giving us his analysis on the upcoming elections and the political parties. Mr. Basson, thank you so much, sir, and do keep doing great, and thank you for your work. Thank you.
Thanks, man.